This wagon and two others traveled through that canyon this last September. They started about 60 miles south of the entrance to that canyon, and these students did 60 miles down through the Huntington Creek Valley. They traveled through that canyon, which is roadless today, and crossed this ranch right here to this trail center. I'm David Vixie, and I am a school teacher at junior high, 7th and 8th grade, from Paradise Adventist Elementary. In the 1840s and the 1850s, many of the travelers that came west were young people. The majority of them were in their teenagers or they were in their young 20s. And the students are here again. They're interpreting their experience and supporting the California Interpretive Trail Center here. They're not giving a school report, they're giving a personal experience. So the public can come up and say, what was it like to travel? They were doing the work of adults to make these wagons move through this canyon and move west. And now they're sharing that experience to the public.
I was like so clumsy in this dress. In the water, it made this thing so much heavier. It was really hard to trudge around, and I really didn't like it. When the boys, they were like rolling up their pants, and they were like, oh, I hate these pants. And I'd be like, you can't be complaining, we're wearing skirts. I'm tripping on them. And while I was saying that, I actually tripped on my skirt. So.
You can feel the ache in your body, you can smell what they smell, you can eat what they ate, you can hear what they were hearing, and you could experience what they've done. Like, literally, I think we're on point of what they have done and everything.
It gives you a new respect for the people, because before you're just like, yeah, that was back in the day, we don't need to learn about that. But when you actually do it, it gives you a different understanding of, wow, this is actually very interesting, and I want to learn more about this instead of sitting there falling asleep reading a history book.
I've been taking students on historic trails for the last 30 years. The students I will read diaries, and students will they'll write their diaries, and I'll look at that, and I'll say, hey, here's a diary somebody wrote about the same area. They said the same thing you did. One student said, this trip has been a horror, and he was 13. I pulled a diary out of my wagon that I had recalled reading, and I said, look, this is 1849, and the man says, this trip has been a horror. Same quote, hundreds of years later.
And then I have a bonnet, which I actually didn't wear on the wagon trip. I wore a hat because I was like, oh, it's gonna be so annoying having the sides of the bonnet. I can't see out. But now I'm wearing it and I'm like, this actually isn't that bad. So.
I was a less picky eater now. I'm a lot harder worker, and I try to figure out stuff that I normally wouldn't try to figure out. And out there, I don't know why we had to take a left or right, but I tried the best I could to figure it out.
It was definitely gives you a different work ethic, and
yeah.
This is an 1850s wagon. It's built to 1850 standards. The template for this wagon is in the St. Louis Museum, the Westward Expansion Museum. Well, these are all authentic. This is blacksmith made, so it's an authentic wagon. And this one is an old wagon. This is over 100 years old, 1870s and all into the 1900s that represents. And I want to say that this is, people look at that and say, oh, this wagon is authentic and this one is newly made. Well, for people traveling west, in the 1800s, most of them didn't go into a shop and say, do you have an antique wagon that's original that I could take? They went to a blacksmith and they went to a wagon builder or to a shop that was selling wagons like Doug Hansen and said, build me a nice new wagon. So that is an authentic wagon. It's built here in this modern age. In 2018, a fire swept through Paradise, California. It's called the Camp Fire and destroyed the town. I had at that time 19 horse-drawn vehicles that I'd been using to teach students, take them out on the trails as a part of my history, and just helping them understand life. Those wagons disappeared. I had one wagon that survived the fire. It was in my trailer. I hadn't unloaded it yet from the previous trip. So when I loaded mules into the wagons to escape from Paradise, that wagon remained alone. Over the next year, I flew out to South Dakota and spoke with Doug Hansen. I'd seen his wagons on the internet for years and always wanted one of those, but could never manage to do that. Well, now I had one wagon and I needed more to continue this project, this activity that I do, these activities I do with students. And so I talked to him, and that year we got 2 more wagons, and then over the next 2 years, 4 more wagons, all from the Doug Hansen wagon shop.
My first reaction to like these wagons, I was like, is that gonna break down? I thought, I was like, okay, how is that gonna go through a trail like the Donner's Pass? Like, I didn't know how rough it would be. I thought it would just be like straight road the whole time and it'd be boring, but it was a wild adventure.
Most authentically, they had to engage with the interactions of people. That's one of the things that made trail travel so difficult for most people. I don't think that's changed in the modern 21st century. Us in our offices, us in our workplaces, having to engage with people of different mindsets or of different opinions. Those are the real challenges as well.
I didn't expect us to lead and us to figure it out. So as soon as you said like, oh, you're not beginners anymore, you're gonna have to lead, that was the day I became leader and had to lead my wagon. That was so hard.
1995, I wanted to get a wagon. This is how it started. I wanted to get a wagon, and I wanted to get to some teams because I thought this experience would be really a dramatic way for students to not just learn history, but to learn, just to learn about life. The students actually rebuilt an old wagon that was broken it was a yard art piece of that. And at the end of it, I was looking for a trail. At the end of that year, we had this wagon ready. I was looking for a place to drive it. And I got in contact with a man who was president of a chapter of an organization called the Oregon-California Trails Association. Somebody tipped me off to that, and I didn't know that organization existed. It was a fairly young organization at that time. And they gave me the information about a trail that went just a few miles away from where we lived. And so we took that trail. And then that year, the Oregon Trails Association honored me with a National Outstanding Teacher of the Year award for that work. And I was invited to the convention and fell in love with that organization and the work that they do, and eventually became a director on the board for maybe 9-10 years and worked with that organization. And so grateful for what they do for preserving, for identifying, for educating the public about these trails. And a lot of the ways that I benefit and the students benefit is through that information, going to their national conventions and just reading the journals and engaging with the people who are experts. That helps me find places to take students and helps me to have resources that helps to bring the voice of the old days and mix it with the voice of the younger days.